Hello and welcome to Prototext Mastercam 2024 rollouts. This will be a series of videos, and in this video we'll take a look at general and interface enhancements. The first thing that you'll probably notice when opening up 2024 is that there's a new G-View cube down in the bottom left-hand corner. So the first thing you can do with this new cube is you can, say, click on the right graphics view. That'll look at the right side of the part. So you can simply click on the cube and go to that graphics view. Now this is the same as choosing the graphics view from the right click menu or from the view menu up on top. They are related to the current WCS. So if you look right now, I'm at the top of the current WCS. If I go change my WCS, I'm no longer on the top of the current WCS and on the back. There's the top of the top WCS. Also, like changing your graphics views, it will follow your rules. So if you have rules set to change the planes with the graphics views, the planes will change as well. I have those rules mostly turned off. Another thing you can do with the cube is you can double click on the cube and it will fit your screen. You can also, much like pressing the wheel and moving the mouse around, you can left click and drag your mouse around to rotate the part around. So you can click on the cube, hold the button in, and rotate the part. There's also some additional buttons along near the cube here. I have some up and down arrows, left and right arrows. They pan the part. If I cursor on that for a second, I can see that if I Alt key on the keyboard, if I press the Alt key and click on the arrows, they rotate the part. I also have another button here that does a 180-degree flip on the part. And if I cursor on that, I see that that has a variety of options as well. We also have a right-click menu with this. I can turn off the cube or right-click show the cube. I also have settings in here where I can change the size of it and the translucency. So that's the new G-Cube for Mastercam 2024, just a new interface element. Another new enhancement to Mastercam 2024 is they have changed how translucency works. There are no settings related to this. Just when I go to translucent down here in the corner, the main thing that happened is, so an easy way to talk about this is to talk about shading. I kind of have two different shading methods here. I have just plain shaded and outline shaded. And when I've outline shaded, it kind of looks like a wireframe on the model. I do like the outline shaded. I think it's easier to see the definition of the shapes, but it's just putting those wireframe looking edges on everything. And in past versions when I went to translucent, those wireframe edges stayed, bold or whatever. They didn't change. Now in 2024, when I go to translucent, those wireframe outline shaded edges, it's not really wireframe, the outline shaded edges also go translucent, making it a little bit easier to see into the model. I'll go back to the PowerPoint here and we can see it side by side. So on the left there, that's what this model would look like translucent in 23, and on the right is what it looks like in Mastercam 2024. Another enhancement to Mastercam 2024 is that they've added in the config, so this is file configuration in the shading topic there, the number one on the left, they added translucency setting for the glass material. This is an override setting over all the glass material types. In running the rollouts, not many people are using the material function. The material function is really just kind of a graphics enhancement, but there is some functional use for it as well. So this is not new for Mastercam 2024. We've had this for a few versions, but I can now go to view and I can turn on view material. And then I can set various materials in Mastercam. So right now these are mainly metallic materials, so they kind of appear shiny. But so it's really a graphical function, but where it can come in handy or be useful in a practical sense, not just in the way it looks, is I have glass material types. So we just looked at translucency, but that's everything. Everything's translucent. Maybe I have an assembly like this and I just want a few components translucent. That's where glass comes in pretty handy. So I already have my material turned on in the view page. So now, for instance, say I could pick that part of the assembly right there, and then right click. This also can be found on the home page, and I can set that material. So, and then I have various levels of translucency inside the glass material as well. This is the least translucent, so I'll set that, and now just that one component is see-through. I could pick that one as well. Maybe I'll go kind of to the middle of the range of translucency there, so that one's more translucent. Maybe I'll pick this front plate here, and I'll set that one to this one. That's the most translucent. So that's not new for Mastercam 2024. I just wanted to show maybe some practical uses or give you some ideas of how that could be used. What's new is in the config, there's a translucency slider for the glass material that affects the overall translucency of these. Next up, we have some dynamic trim enhancements in Mastercam 2024. This, if you've been using Mastercam for a while, remember the old trim break extend function. This is basically very similar, about the same to that. They added a new trim function to the ribbon, the wireframe ribbon in Mastercam 2024, and it's in the first place here. You still have your other trim functions as they were before. This just adds a new one, and it's basically like all the trims in one. You do have a trim break function. The trim shortens and lengthens, breaks, shortens and lengthens, but if you shorten it, leaves the part that would have been shortened behind, so it turns one into two. Or if it lengthens, it creates a new line. And then you have all your different trim settings here. Now, on top of it, there's what it kind of looks like in the interface. They did a little modification of wording here. It's not a functionality modification per se, but we always had like modify length, and then if you put a positive number in, it would lengthen. If you put a negative number in, it would shorten. And maybe that wasn't super intuitive to use a negative number to shorten, so they've kind of changed the wording on it. Now it's lengthen and shorten, and it's just always a positive number. No more negative numbers to shorten. We also see some machine group setup enhancements in Mastercam 2024. In Mastercam 2023, you probably noticed, and we talked a bunch about it in the rollouts as well. They basically completely redid the machine group setup. They, at that time too, they mentioned that this is just the beginning. There was going to be more stuff, as future versions rolled out. So we have additional stuff once again in this version. We see most of the changes to the stock page. So for instance here, if I kind of work my way top down, I can now have multiple stocks. I have some new ways of building stock, which are basically just similar to some of the old ways we had that we lost in 23. They're back. We have our kind of interface that we saw in 22 and older, where I have an anchor point and linked with. We did have this stuff, in 23 as part of the bounding box. We still have the bounding box function there. And we have some new push-pull functions that are pretty cool, specifically just on the stock setup page. So here's kind of, on the left is Mastercam 2024 machine group setup, and on the right, there was not much in the stock setup here in Mastercam 2023 on the right. You really had to go into bounding box, and then you got, some of these options in bounding box. Now they're just back on the main page like they were in older versions. There are also some enhancements to the simulation page as well. Now we'll go back to Mastercam and take a look at all that. So since this is all pretty new in starting Mastercam 2023, I'd like to just kind of run through it all real quick. So the main updates are on the simulation page and the stock setup page. But I'm just going to start on the file page, and this is where you can change to a different post if you want. The in the last version, the program number used to be on the tooling page. Now it's, or in 2022 it was, and last version it got moved here to this page. So you can put a program number in there. I go to the master model. Now, a lot of this stuff is what happened in 2023 is I did some of my job setup here, and then it was usually more often used if you were going to use machine simulation. You could set up fixturing and your machine simulation stuff by going into simulator options here. And instead of kind of having two interfaces for this, what they did is they took all this stuff and they moved it into the job setup. So, I mean, if you're not doing machine simulation or you want to do some of this stuff, you don't have to. When I get to here, for instance, my master model page, I don't have to set that up. Mastercam has a default mechanic where whatever levels you have active when you run simulation or run verify, those components go into verify and they're considered the model. And then once in verify or simulation, you can hide or make the model translucent. But basically everything that's on the screen then is going to go in as the model. With this, I can kind of fine tune it a little bit. I can say, well, this is the model. And then no matter what, that's the model then in simulation. And I can say, this is the fixturing, and it breaks it up and it makes it where I can turn on and off fixturing, turn on and off the model. So you don't have to do, for instance, this master model. I'm just going to show kind of what it does and what it looks like. So here I can just select from my screen. I can say that's my master model. I can do some stuff here. I can isolate that. I can force a certain color on it and a remainder color to kind of help identify it. You can set a material here, and that just gives you the volume and weight. But I'm going to move on down to stock setup. Here's where I see a lot of my changes. One of the things that I used to have in Mastercam is I can make a stock from 2 points. So that's back here. I can say add from 2 corners. I can make from that point upper left-hand corner to the bottom right-hand corner. Kind of get my stock in there, and then I have my anchor point there with it on the center. I could do something like go to a 7-inch stock, and it evenly expands. So I got that kind of interface back, and then I have some more stuff too. I'm going to come in here and say create rectangular stock about that part, and then I kind of get a minimum bounding box there, but that's just to create a rectangular stock. I also have my bounding box function, which is the same as the previous versions. It takes me into my bounding box dialog, which now has a lot of similar things to this or whatever. But so now once I have that stock made, you can see here I also can have 2 different stocks. Now that doesn't mean that they're both active. Only one will ever be active. So whatever the top one is, that's the active one. If you want to set another one as active stock, you can do right click and set as active stock. So this isn't like for Vice 1, Vice 2 really. I would probably still use stock model for that kind of stuff. This is more like maybe I made this part this time around, had this kind of, this size of stock, and then the next I got to make it 6 months later and a different size stock got ordered. And maybe next time I'll go back, so I don't, I could have different size stocks in there, and then switch between them as needed. I have some tool paths that work off a stock that could be affected by that. Like if I do a dynamic mill and I don't pick a machining region, it goes off the stock. Facing can go off the stock, so those would go dirty as I switch stocks, and then could be regenerated and updated to the current stock size. But that they're not simultaneously, they're not both active at the same time. I can have multiples in there. Only one is ever active though. But whatever one I am lit up here is the one I'm dealing with and editing on the screen. So I have the second one. There is some other cool things on this. I can do stuff like push pull now right from here. Now this isn't like completely new because you can do this kind of stuff when you're in bounding box. And then when I do push pull, you can see I'm kind of incremental. I drug that face up a 1/2 inch. I can also now push pull absolute. Down here I got the push pull function, and I switch from incremental to absolute, and if I drag that now, look at it starting at, that's the actual size it's at now, and then I'm dragging it to actual size numbers. Or where that could be handy is on this outside. Maybe that's the overall length, and I could drag it to a nominal number. Now that's just only going to drag the one side though, so there's another new option in push pull here where I get both directions. So now I could do something like absolute both directions. And if I click on this face, I could pull it just at kind of an odd number now. So if it was an incremental value, I'd have to kind of if I wanted to bring it to a nominal size, I'd have to do some math and figure that out. But here, if I drag it here now on absolute and both sides, I can drag it evenly on both sides to a nominal number. So I could drag this out to say, 6 inches. Now I'm 6 inches overall, and it's centered. I drag both sides. So that's kind of some cool new interface elements there on the stock setup. Also in my stock setup, I have work holding, and this is for my fixturing. So I can define my fixturing. Once again, you don't have to do this, but if you go into simulation or verify, this allows you to turn on and off the display of your fixturing separately from your model. So I can select from the screen. Same stuff here. I can isolate it. Now there are multiple components here, so I can shift click to isolate them all. So there's my fixturing. I could also set a fixture color and a remainder color to help see it. Same kind of stuff we saw on the master model. You don't have to do this. This was new in 23, or I mean, we had this kind of functionality to a degree in 22 and older, but it was in the other interface, the simulator options button. So here's fixturing. And my tool page didn't change a whole lot from 22, 23, 24. And now I do have some changes down here on my simulation page too. I'm going to green check out of here real quick. One of the main things is maybe I have a stock model I want to verify from. I would used to come in here into simulator options, and then I could switch it from my stock setup to a stock model. Well, now when I hit the simulator options button, there's no more separate pop-up. It takes me right to the simulation in the manager here in the panel interface. And then here I can do my stock override. And if I have multiple stock models, I can hit this little red button here, and then I can pick which stock model to use for my simulation. I'm going to turn that off. That's a little bit different place and interface there for that. So that's my machine group setup in Mastercam 2024. A couple new things in there and a little bit of review. There's also another cool function, Mastercam 2024. Sometimes these little interface enhancements are some of my favorite things in the new versions. Some of the past things, I really liked it when we could start drilling by picking the walls of solid holes a few versions ago. And I really like the temporary midpoint function that we gained, where you could hover over 2 spots, and then it gave you the midpoint. It removed having to draw things to get that in previous versions. This is kind of one of those enhancements. I'm really gonna miss it if I'm not in 2024. But what we can do now is I just showed you how you can set up a stock model for simulation. There's a shortcut for that in 2024. Now in Mastercam 2024, when I pick operations for simulation or verify, if the first operation is a stock model, it will automatically use that for simulation. So let's take a look at that. So I just want to verify that I'm back to just my core cube on my simulation there. So if I hit verify for that operation, I'll just get my square block of stock. Yep. So what's new here is I have this stock model here, op3. I can see it on my screen there. The roughing's been done, some drilling. If I pick, say, 3 to op6, because the stock model is the first one. If there's other stock models in there, it's not affected. It has to be the first one in numerical order. And if I hit verify on that, without having to go into any settings or do anything, it uses that as my starting point for verify. And then just to throw it in there again, after those toolpaths, I roughed it a little bit better with a waterline toolpath, a smaller step down. So I can pick 7 to 9 and verify from there. And then I'd verify from that stock model. It's got just a finer step in it. So that's pretty cool. It makes sense. Since we're on simulation, there are some simulation enhancements. Simulation for as long as I can remember has had collision detection in it and collision reports. And but what's new in 24 is I can now export that report to a CSV file. So you can just take that report, and it's the same info as in a report CSV. You could that could be part of your process, where that gets saved as the part file. So the person setting it up or running it can take a look at that and see that everything cleared and everything looked good. There are also some enhancements to my move list and some graphics options. So let's go back to Mastercam and take some looks at this. Before I do this, I'm going to go into my stock setup, and I want to make some collisions here. So I'm going to start with this stock, but I'm just going to take and add a, let's just go back to, I just want incremental in one direction. Just add a 1/2 inch of stock to the top of the part. And then I have, some drilling pass and roughing, and they didn't account for that extra 1/2 inch of stock, so that's going to generate some collisions. I'm just going to verify this drill and this OptiRough. And depending what settings you have on, it could be easy to miss collisions. If I hit play on this, my drill retract wasn't high enough. It was still in material when it was wrapping between holes, so I get the red collision marks there. But this could be pretty hard to identify depending on how fast I got my simulation going, or if I hit the advance ahead button. All those collisions do get machined away, so it can be hard to recognize that collisions happened. You have to be a little bit careful. And what's new in 24 is I can create a report on the collisions, but what I want to show people is some of the options and things. This is a good excuse to kind of show you how the collision stuff works. So if I go here to verify, first off, I have to have collision checking on. I have some options in here, whether or not it does proximity alert. That's the holder can only get so close to the material. I like to turn that off sometimes. I can also clear my list and adjust my list to show them or not. And then also real important here, I have some collision options. So some things may not check as a collision or whatever. Well, they're by default, not all the different collision checks are on, and you can make adjustments there as needed or whatever suits your needs. So first off, it has to be on. There's some options for it. And secondly, I'm going to rewind this toolpath. If I come back here to the home page, I have stop conditions. And one of the things I can do is I can stop on an event of a collision. So this can make it a little bit easier to catch. Now I get collisions here right away because even the starting height wasn't high enough, and basically every time I hit a collision, I got to hit the play button again or the advance button again. It stops the process for the collisions. Now I've added quite a few collisions in here, so I'm gonna turn that off. But you just notice, it'd be easy to miss without that on, so that you can pick how you want to use that. But if I'm just gonna fast forward this out a bit here and let it go for a few. So I got some collisions there. I also end up with some holder collisions here with that extra 1/2 inch of stock, which with only these operations won't be machined away, but eventually, depending on what I'm running again, if I was doing the finishing, those aren't actually hitting the part yet, so that could be machined away. So also handy here, I'll just fast forward to the end. I do have a report here. So here's my collision report, and I can click on any one of these collisions and move right to it. It's kind of hard to see why that's a collision right now because all the material is gone, but that extra 1/2 inch of material was still there when this was running. So this was kind of, the tool was still buried in the material. But I can click on the report here. Another thing in the report, I can say, view the proximity alerts and collisions or not. So I could turn off the proximity alerts. If you look at the size of my scroll bar here, I got a fairly big report here. If I turn off the proximity alerts, my scroll bar got much shorter, and these are just the actual collisions per what's set as a collision in my options. And then what's new in 24 is I can hit this button here and save this to a CSV file. So I just wanted to show a little bit about how the collision stuff worked, and what's new is the report. Also, that they have this report up, that's on the verify tab here, and I'm sorry, on the view tab. And whether or not I have the report on, I have several different things, reports and panels I can show here. You do want to be a little bit careful with this. This interface is just like the Mastercam interface in the managers panels. You can tear them off. You can have them on a separate screen. I don't like having too many on this screen. It eats up space real fast. But if I have it docked, I can drag the name to the name, and they kind of go on top of each other, and then I got tabs. Also new in 2024 is this move list here. I've generally only gotten some basic information in my move list. This is like every move. As I'm playing, I can click around here, and as I'm playing, it scrolls through here. What I can do now is there's this plus button, and there's a bunch more info I can include in the move list. This is also in the simulation, machine simulation portion of 2024 as well. I can get machining time. That's approximate machining time. It doesn't account for acceleration, deceleration for that single move. Move length. There's some different. I get way more info available to me now here in 2024. And the last new thing in simulation in 2024 is just a kind of like a config option. If I go here to File Options, I've always been locked to have the exact same background color settings as my Mastercam. Now I can turn that off, and I can set individual settings for the graphics background here in Verify. This is also a nice enhancement in Mastercam 2024. It just makes sense once you see it. It's just kind of a little interface thing again. So it's interface kind of graphics update, and also a little bit of interfacing update too, a new way you can do something. I get a graphical plane display for drilling. Before I get to that though, there's another little enhancement here too. When I'm in my new manager for my hole definition for drilling, I now get a number of features here. So maybe here it's pretty easy to see I got 4 holes, but maybe I have 30, 50 holes. I can see how many holes I have picked, and then if I call it on my print, I can make sure it's a match to ensure that, yep, I got all my holes picked. So I got a hole count here, and then this is the graphical and interface part of it on my hole making toolpath. So like helix bore, drill, circle mill. I get a new on my linking page. I get a new plane display. I can view my retract and clearance planes on my screen on my part. I have a couple different variations of this. So this first toolpath is just using absolute for everything on the linking page. So when I come to the linking page, when I'm absolute, I kind of get a big sheet because everything has to be the same. And even if the holes are at different depths, absolute, everything's the same. So this is kind of the new stuff I get here. I can choose individual planes, whether I see them or not. Kind of cool here. I've always just kind of had to add my tip comp or look in backplot to see where I'm at. It does not give me a total depth here, but if I do get a plane for my tip comp, then coming down here, so the red is my depth and the purple is my tip comp, so I can kind of see on the part where my depth is actually going to. I can turn on or off whether or not this is active, all of them or individual ones. I have the button up here to turn off the display graphical elements, to turn them all off. Let's take a look at a few more of these. This next one uses incremental. So I'm incremental, it basically just gives me a little plane over every hole. Now, because all these holes are at the same depth, the planes are basically the same, but if they're varying depths, these would be, because I could be, say, like 4 inches above the hole, top of the hole. So then these could be, they'd always be all 4 inches, but they could be at different coding values if the holes are at different depths. Another thing you can do, so that's the graphical part of it. I said there's a new interfacing part of it too. You can actually also click on these and move them around right off the screen. So I just edit to 6 there on the screen. That'd be the same as coming in here and editing the value. It's just kind of a new way to interface with it too. And then of course this also works for 5-axis drilling. So here's a 5-axis drill one. Pretty handy, get a quick look, just a real quick look at it. Everything looks good. It just gives you an easy way to kind of double check what you're doing. There's also been an enhancement to edit common parameters in Mastercam 2024. Not certain if everybody's familiar with this function. It's a very cool function in of itself. It's been around as long as I can remember. Back in the V days, it was there. This is handy if you want to make mass edits. So say you got your operation default set for kind of vise work, and then you do a job and it's clamp work, and your clearances are all too short to jump the clamps, and now you got 30 tool paths, and you want to edit all your clearances to 6 inches or something to jump the clamps. Instead of having to do that 30 times, you can do it in one spot. So that's been around a long time. I'm going to take a look at that. But what's new in 2024 It could be, there's what the kind of the edit common parameters looks like. You pick, there I got several operations picked. It's edit selected, edit common, and it brings me into the interface. But what's new in 2024 is that if you have multiple planes in use, it doesn't force them all to the same plane. It made it hard to say, maybe I had some indexing work done and I wanted to change my WCS to a different initial orientation in the machine. That was hard to do. You had to break them up into just edit the toolpaths that have the same um, TNC planes. Just edit those because it would edit your TNC planes. It'd force them all to a different one. What's new in 2024, if it has different TNC planes or different to any of these, it blanks it out. And if it's blanked out, it doesn't edit it. These used to be filled in. So it'd say like top. So I have planes using front and back. They would then be forced to top and be no longer correct. So here in my toolpath group 2, I have several in top, but then I have some holes done from the front, some holes done from the back. So that would be problematic in earlier versions. If I want to change the WCS in this, maybe I have a new top or something where it's rotated 90 for how it's put in the machine. So now I can right click, edit select operations, edit common parameters. And there's a little bit different interface in here. It's not every single parameter. It's the common parameters, the parameters that are the same in every toolpath. And I just want to go through, in case you haven't used this much, I just want to go through what it looks like in my first example I gave. Say I want this to jump clamps. So maybe I want to adjust my clearance. I want to change my clearance to 6 inches. So that's pretty straightforward. But then some of these other ones, use and when, and so use, no change, enable, disable. Now, if you think about this, some of my toolpaths could have clearance off, some could have clearance on. So use no change. I would leave it alone. If it's off, it's off. So it wouldn't get edited. It'd stay off. But maybe now I'm jumping clamps. So even if it's off, maybe I want to make sure it's on. So that would, if I switch it to enable, that would force it on in every operation, even if it's currently off. And then the when to use it, that's, only use clearance at start and end, or always use clearance. Once again, some toolpaths could have one setting, some toolpaths could have the other. So I could say no change, leave that setting alone, or I could force them to always use the clearance. No matter what it was set before, it would be forced to that. Same thing for incremental absolute. Some could be incremental, some could be absolute. I could just leave that alone or force it to a certain setting. So that's kind of the first example or kind of how that's interfaced. And then what's actually changed in 2024 is here on the planes page. On the planes page, I come in here. This used to also say top when I was in here, and it would edit these toolpaths then to top, which wouldn't be a valid direction to cut those holes. And now, because not all the selected operations have the same stuff, it's kind of grayed out or empty there. So as long as I don't fill something in there, it won't be edited and won't be affected. But I could still hit like the white panel here and pick a different default orientation. Now they're all edited WCS back, but they still had the TNC planes that they had before I made the edits. So that's what's new in 2024, making that edit common parameter way more usable for editing planes. And that completes our Mastercam rollout video for the design and interface changes for Mastercam 2024. Make sure to check out our other 2024 rollouts on the other topics. Thank you.